All right, all right, all right. Welcome to Clozer Cult Podcast. I'm your host, Alma Merrill, and today we have one of my very, very favorite people, Mr. Louie Hamner. Also, a lot of things have been going on recently. We're going to talk a little bit about that in my own business and some things that I'm changing. But before we do that, we're going to talk to Mr. Louie Hamner. How you doing, brother?
Great. Yeah, doing great. I love watching you do this.
Thanks, brother. So Louie and I have known each other. Wait, how long have we known? About 8 years, 9 years, 10 years?
Well, yeah, I guess 10 years, right? Yeah,
10 years? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Remember my journal entry?
Yeah. That's right. That was 10 years ago, huh?
Like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
11 years. 2011. So 11 years ago.
So we were over at Tony Robbins the other day together, and he shows me this thing. He's like, "Look, I made a journal entry about you," and it was like, what was it? It was like,
It was a journal entry of like the agents I wanted to get their business from.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to get their business, and it was from 2011.
yeah.
So I had your name down.
And-
Alma.
And when he's talking about business, getting business from people, so Louie started a company called initially it was Magellan, right?
Yeah.
Magellan Title,
Yeah.
and then you turned it to what?
Vanguard Title.
It was Vanguard
I
Title.
merged with Keystone Title.
That's right. You merged with I forgot you
Yeah.
merged with Keystone. That's right.
Merged with Keystone to make Vanguard, and then we recently sold almost a year ago to Fidelity National.
To Fidelity National. Yeah, man.
So I had that old business journal, right? And looking.
Yeah, congrats on the sale, though. By the way, that's pretty. Thank you. Thanks to our studio audience. We have about 250 people here today, so they're in numbers. But you wrote down, different agents I wanted to market to and get their business, all this stuff, and we've been working together for a long time now.
Yeah, it all worked out.
Cool.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, we've gone through different title reps, and we've gone through ownership changes and all kinds of stuff. But so Louie's here today. He's a very special person to me personally. I call him my guru. I don't know that he would necessarily agree with that, but he's kind of a guru of mine. Jennifer, my wife, calls him a shaman. There's a lot of different names, I think, for Louie, and a lot of people relate to him.
Some of those names we can't say. We don't want to.
Yeah, there's certain names we probably shouldn't call him, but it's been a fun ride so far, and you've been doing some amazing things. Tell me real quick about, because a lot of our listeners are people who are business-minded, entrepreneur-minded people, and they're trying to grow businesses. They're trying to scale. So let's talk a little bit about a couple things I want to talk about. First is where you're from, what your beginnings were. I know you kind of came from some humble beginnings, right?
Yeah. I was actually born in Nashville, Tennessee, and I always say that because I only lived there for maybe 10 months. But I don't want to forget that's where I was born.
Bow chicken wow wow,
Yeah.
Nashville, baby.
Nashville. Anyway, so born in Nashville, Tennessee. When I was about a year old, we moved. Grew up in Indiana.
Okay.
And 13 kids in my family, and we lived out in the middle.
Wait,
of nowhere.
13? How did I
kids.
not know there's 13? I was thinking there was like 7.
No, 13. Yeah.
Holy cow, bro.
I've only mentioned you know Matt.
I know Matt.
You know
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Who have I met? I've met Matt and his wife, and I don't know if I've met any
I don't
others.
think anybody else.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I only have a couple of siblings out here in Utah.
Okay.
So you wouldn't have met those. Anyway.
Right.
So yeah. I grew up out in Indiana, out in the middle of nowhere, in the farming community, right?
Right.
So kind of like really like on Field of Dreams.
Right.
It's just
Right.
like literally. And 13 kids, and the first house that we lived in, I always say that it was my great grandfather's house, but it was 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and it had an outhouse, and we used the outhouse.
Wow. So no indoor plumbing.
No, there was.
Okay.
It had one bathroom, full bathroom,
Okay.
right? But with 13 kids,
You
that
had to
thing's
have
occupied.
another option.
Yeah,
of
that
course.
thing is occupied. So anyway, just grew up in that, and a 2-bedroom. I think it might have been 3-bedroom, but really, the 1 bedroom was like a washer room,
Holy
storage
cow.
room, and so
Wow.
brother slept in the living room, and it was like So super humble beginnings, and yeah, we just always there was always we always had something that we wanted or never there was never enough.
Right.
We were on welfare a lot, like the majority of the time that I can remember growing up, we had some type of assistance or something, something
Right.
happening, and crazy, just crazy. That's how grew up
And how were your parents? They still married and all that?
yeah. My dad passed away in 15,
Oh, okay.
but they were yeah, totally.
Mom's still around?
Yeah, mom's still. My mom turned 92 this year.
Holy cow, bro! The
Yeah.
Hamners live a long time.
Yeah, my mom's 92. Yeah, 92.
How old was your dad when he passed?
Let's see. So in 15, so that was 7 years ago. He was 31. So I'm trying to think. So like 31 to 2000.
Uh-huh. I don't know.
I'm trying to think. 31. Yeah, you asked me to do. I can't do math.
Yeah, Jennifer, my wife, she's listening to this and she's going, that would make him.
That's true. So my mom's 92, right? So then my dad passed away 7 years ago.
Okay.
So he was 84 when he passed away.
84.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he lived. I mean, it's a good age, right?
Right. And now, so you obviously you grew up very humble beginnings. Was there ever a time when your parents made a ton of money, or so you didn't come from any money?
Oh no. Yeah. No. Yep. So we lived in that house, and then my dad built a house. My grandfather gave him some land, and then we didn't have enough money to build the house, so he did it, right?
Right.
But it was never finished. Like,
Interesting.
In
yeah.
today's world, we never would have got a occupancy.
Right.
So we grew up in that, and honestly, growing up, just how we grew up, and I never had friends over because the house, it just wasn't
right. It wasn't conducive to having friends.
It was just, it was embarrassing.
I felt the same way growing up. At some point, it was like, man, there's no environment for friends.
Yeah, and it wasn't. I don't know how to say it, but my brother would always say, I never thought we were poor. I just thought we didn't have money.
Okay, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Interesting.
Like, it didn't feel like, but kind of like that. Like we just never had money. Like, when I was in junior high, my dad, the starter went out on his car. I always say the story, but it went out on his car, and so he had to pop the clutch because it was a stick shift, right?
Right.
So we'd wake up every morning, we'd push the car so he could get going.
Yeah.
And then I remember one day asking him, I'm like, how do you get home? You work in Indianapolis. Like, what do you do? Get people to push the car? He's like, no, there's a big hill. I park about, he said he parked about a quarter of a mile away or something. He's like, there's this big hill, and I just park at the top of that hill, and then I just watch for cars, and when there's no traffic, I
coast down
and pop the clutch and come home. I'm like, brilliant. Great idea. Like, that's awesome.
You're a genius, Dad.
I'm like, and we didn't have money to buy a starter that in today's dollars was probably maybe $80.
Right.
Right. Like in today's dollars, maybe $100, but we didn't have $100
right
for months. I'm talking 3, 4 months, 5 months.
Like, and what did he do for work?
He worked, he did a couple things. He did some sales jobs and he started a business that didn't really work out and did a couple sales jobs. And then he started doing construction. And then I think when I was about in the 8th grade or 9th grade, he got a job working at Fort Benjamin Harrison, which is as a civilian military employee to write military manuals.
Really?
To like rewrite them. And so that was just a consistent job, but it wasn't like, and now he had a job with insurance because before we didn't have insurance. And so, honestly, when I was a kid, we would play sports. We had to get a physical from the doctor.
Yeah.
I guess I'll say this. My mom would just forge the doctor's, just a signature and just fill it out as if she was a doctor and just scribble the name.
I'm pretty sure they're not going to prosecute at this point.
I think the statute of limitations is but, we couldn't afford to go pay to have the doctor give us a physical because we didn't have insurance. And so she'd just say, you're healthy. This is bull. She's like, this is bull crap.
And then your mom, was she just homemaker, stayed at home with kids?
Yeah. There was a period of time where she worked too as well. And then it was like, oh my gosh, we have money. We don't have to be on welfare.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's like, oh, we have it, And then, Anyway, so that's how we grew up. So like from the time that I was in the 6th grade.
And how long was that when she was working and you guys didn't have to be on
she
welfare?
did that for like 2 or 3 years, maybe 2 or
Okay.
3 years, I think.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think something like that. And yeah, but from the time that I was in the 6th grade, I would mow lawns during the summer,
Right.
and then I would take that money and pay for my school books.
Okay.
And then prior to that, my siblings would work summer jobs in farming, like detasseling corn or baling hay.
Okay.
And then my parents would say, hey, to like my brother Matt, they say, hey Matt, you're going to pay for Louie's school books and school clothes.
Oh.
So my
okay.
brother would work to pay
Right.
for his own stuff and then mine. And then my other older brother would work to pay for his own stuff and then my younger sibling,
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, when I say no money, there was no money.
It was very humble.
Yeah, it didn't. And so that's the whole, I think I talked to you about my firefly story and catching fireflies and selling them. And like, you just had to
So
make
tell
no
me
money.
about that story. I've heard it, but the listeners haven't.
yeah.
So tell me about your.
Yeah. So that was when it really started, is in the 6th grade, where my scoutmaster said, hey, how are you going to pay for scout camp when it comes up next year? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, well, you got to do something. Cause I was too little really to do any big farm work or bale hay. I mean, I'm in the 6th grade. I can't
Right.
pick up a 75-pound bale, Anyway,
And were you a little dude or were you a big guy growing
I
up?
was skinny. I was wasn't short,
Right.
but I was skinny.
Okay.
I was like a 12 slim, 14
Okay.
slim.
Right.
I was never a 14 regular.
Right.
Anyway, so my scoutmaster said, hey, there's this company called Sigma Firefly Company, and they'll pay you to, send them fireflies, and you got to they have a special canister. They'll pay you a penny a firefly, and they take the fireflies and do it, like cancer research. And he's like, so
Really?
yeah,
What a
I don't know if
trip,
they
dude.
do that now, but he's like, so, and he gave me. He's like, let me find out the number. This is before the internet, right? So like to find stuff out. Anyway, so he had the number. I called it. They sent me the brochure and all the stuff, and you had to. Anyway, so I saved up some money, bought a specialized can that had like cat litter in it, so it'd keep the things dry, the mugs
Whoa.
dry and all that kind of stuff. And so I started catching fireflies, and I'd catch about 100 a night, which
Wow.
was $1 a night. Took me,
Right.
$1 back in 1982.
That's pretty good,
That's
man.
pretty good. It was
Yeah.
Minimum wage was like $2.25 an hour,
Right.
and I was making like $1.25.
And you were how old at this point?
6th grade.
Okay. Yeah.
It
There
was
you
great.
go.
So I started catching them, made some money, bought more cans
Uh-huh.
because you could only, if you caught for 4 nights, then you had to send them in. You could only keep the fireflies for so many days
Because
couldn't
they
couldn't
wouldn't
too old.
they wouldn't be bad. They would
Yeah,
be
they
bad.
would
They'd go
die.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I got money. Then I bought more cans. And I bought 4 cans. And as a kid, then I could catch every night,
Right.
And then I started getting better at catching fireflies. I made my own net from my old pillowcase. I cut out the pillowcase and sewed it up and put a hanger and made a rim for the net and all this stuff, and was catching fireflies because I was catching them by hand, and catching them by hand was hell.
Right.
So I'm like, I got to make a net because you could buy a net, but the net was like $12. I'm like, I don't have $12 to buy
Right.
a net. Anyway, so I make this net, and long story short, one night, because you could only catch when it was dusk, right? Fireflies only come out like when it starts getting dark.
Right.
Well, what I didn't realize one night, I was riding home with my dad after working up at the farm on some tractor or something. I don't know. I was helping him fix my grandpa's tractor or something.
Right.
And I looked out in the woods and I noticed that, oh my gosh, in the woods, it's so, the canopy's so dense, it gets dark like at 5:30.
Oh.
And I couldn't start catching fireflies till about 6:45.
Dude, that
7.
changes your
I'm
game
like,
plan.
dude, that gives me more.
your business plan.
Yeah, that's right. Like so then I started catching like 300 a night, 400 a night. And then I just got faster and faster and found a part in the woods that like those fireflies were so dense. Like then it got to be I was catching 1,000 a night. I was making $10 in about 2.5 hours. I'm like, and that's a lot more than minimum wage.
Whoa.
It was crazy, dude.
Yeah,
I remember
that's
getting checks.
freaking
I was getting
sick.
$40 checks and $30, $50 checks. And my parents were like, how are you making this money? You know,
You're like Firefly business.
dude,
It's good business.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. But it was funny because at the end of the summer, my mom's like, you can't even see any fireflies out in the field anymore. I'm catching 1,000 a night.
Dude, if they were a pest, then
Yeah,
you just fixed the problem,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, if you think about it, right? I've
Yeah.
like 30,000 in a month. Like,
Wow.
dude, it was crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was awesome.
Wow. And so now, was that kind of like your first
That
job?
was like my first job. So that was like in the 6th grade. I started doing that. You know, I mean, I would mow for my grandma here and there,
Mhm.
a couple bucks. But it
My
wasn't
first
much.
job was doing door-to-door sales, selling out of those catalogs. Do you remember those?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I would do I'd go door-to-door knocking. I made this little milk crate trailer for my push scooter.
Yeah.
And I would just go door to door and show them the catalog. They'd pick a number of an item that they want to, stapler or a, stationery
Thermometer
or
something. Yeah,
yeah. And they would buy it, and then they would, the company, I would ship the company the money. It was cash, I'd ship them the cash in this cash envelope. They would return the items to me, and I'd go deliver them to my people,
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool.
I remember those the Boys Life Scout that
Yeah.
would have these things you could make money.
Right. It was probably something like that,
Yeah.
I don't remember the details, but
That's
yeah,
awesome.
that's rad. So you and I kind of had a similar first job as entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So tell me about obviously, so that you grew up very humble. You that was kind of your first job, and what's life like now? And then how did you get from there to here?
Man, that's
I can brag for you if you want. I mean, I was just at Louie's house last night.
no, I'm like
He's just got a new house. It's unfreaking believable. It's beautiful, modern, massive, gorgeous, like pool and cold tub and massive shop out back. And you do amazing breath work. And
yeah.
I mean, that house is dynamic.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
That's so it was funny when we.
So I'll brag for you,
so
and then now.
I'll tell you this. So it's kind of funny. It's like growing up. If somebody came over to our house, I was so I'm gonna say like embarrassed of it. I would hide, right? Like
Right.
if somebody from church came over to visit my dad or something, I'm like, I don't want to. I can't look at them and be in this room,
Right.
because it was just awful,
Right.
I would tell these stories to my wife, and she would say, "I'm gonna wait until she's like, it couldn't have been that bad." And then when she came to visit, she was like, "Oh, this was worse than when this was bad. I can see because it was it was the same when we got married. Like it hadn't
Right.
changed,
Right.
And she's like, I can totally see that. Anyway, the reason why I say this is because I was always embarrassed because I was afraid I would be judged by how the house looked.
Right.
And I thought, this isn't my house. I don't want people to think that this is how I would live.
Right.
I would not choose
To live that
to
way.
live this way. And
Right. I
can't-
remember
and
feeling that way sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. So we bought this really nice house. And what's crazy, it took me 2 months. I'm emotional saying this, but it took me 2 months to have people over because I didn't want to be judged by my house still. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Dude, it was like I cried. And Viv's like, and she'd say, let's invite people over or whatever. And I'm like, I don't want to. And she's like, why? I'm like, I just couldn't do it. Like, there were people that came over and I would go hide. Literally today in my house, I would hide because I'm like, I don't want them to see me.
Isn't that interesting that we still carry those same shames
Yeah.
that we had when we were a kid? One was from, I'm so embarrassed because we're so poor. I don't want anybody in my house. Now I'm wealthy. I don't want anybody in my house. I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, I'm worried about how they would judge me, right? Like, it was crazy. I mean, there were certain people that could come over that I was okay with, but if it was somebody that I just didn't, just like that I would talk to on the regular basis, I was like if you came over, I mean, I know you, we're
Right.
not like tight, like.
Uh-huh.
But if you came over, I'm like, I don't want Alma to see me. I kind of want to hide, like. Yeah, Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Dude, it was crazy.
Well, and once you let people into your house, there's another level. Like I've come to your house multiple times now, and but there's still a different level of trust, vulnerability, all those things. Whether you're wealthy or poor, when you let people into your life and into your home, it's a next level thing.
True.
And so I feel the same way. Like when I have people to my house, I've had some of the same guilts and stuff, like when we bought the house and the house was dated to the 1980s, the last time it was remodeled.
Right.
I actually felt more comfortable having people in my home because when the house was dated. Now we've remodeled it and it's beautiful. And we have this massive kitchen and a big, huge island and all this cool stuff. I'm like very hesitant to let people in because unless they're like direct family, but to let people in and kind of see my world because I don't want to be judged,
Yeah, truly. And I remember, I think it was Sean Whalen once that said, what holds you back from doing what you want to do? And people were saying fear. And he's like, okay, fear. And then he's like, that's total BS.
Mm.
You don't want to be judged.
Right.
You're not afraid to fail.
Right.
You're afraid to be judged by other people. And
Wow.
dude, when he said that, my heart was pounding and I got emotional. I'm like, that's my fear. Like, I don't want to be judged.
Right.
On if the business fails, I don't want to be judged that it failed.
Right.
I'm okay that it failed. I just don't want to be considered an idiot. Or,
and let's talk a little bit about the business. So you started this title company.
Yeah.
10 years ago, right? Or 11 years ago.
I got in the business in 2003. I did a satellite office or like kind of like a friend. So Atlas, my friend Mike Brown owned Atlas Title, and he let me do an office, like a satellite office.
Okay. Yeah.
Kind of like a franchise, that I made the majority of the profit because I did all the marketing, everything. It was his name, his license, and then I paid him a fee to run.
And
it.
were you an escrow officer at
escrow
that time?
officer, yeah. It was at Atlas Title. So we did that for 7 years, and then I decided to go on my own and create Magellan.
Right.
Because there were things that I wanted to do and we shook hands and it was great. And I love Mike. To this day, he was like a dream business partner, Mike Brown. And anyway, so I did that, doing Magellan, and then kind of got to a point where I'm like, what I really want to do, I can't do alone, or it's going to take a long time to do.
Right.
I came, was introduced, met Jeff Poulton and Steve Poulton and Keystone Title and talked with them, and then realized that we had a lot of, same desires, we wanted to create the same type of, value propositions and all this stuff. And so we thought, man, if we came together, and his talents and abilities were way.
And at this
than mine.
point, when you were right at the beginning and starting, how much were you making a year at this point when you were I'm going to go start a title company?
So I was making quite a bit, so when I started, first off, I got fired from my first title job, my first job as a title officer. I got fired from that. They just said, you're not going to be a rock star and you're not going to make it. And
right.
And
what did that job pay?
30. It was going to pay me $40,000 annually.
Okay. So that was kind of your first gig into title. You're making 40 grand.
40 grand. Okay. That's right. Yep. And then, I actually went to a Wasatch Title, which was from CPR Title went to Wasatch, and they paid me a commission, straight commission, zero.
Oh, wow.
It was if you close a deal, we'll pay a couple $100 or something like that, And I did relatively well there. And the only reason why I went there is because I had a client who said, hey, they fired you. You're better than what they said you are. But I'm like, I don't know. They think I'm terrible. Anyway, they talked me into getting this. And so I did that, and I made, being there, I think I made 90 grand.
Okay.
In my first full year there. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I went from 30. So I started out at 30. They gave me a bump to 40, my first title job. And then they fired me. And then in my first year with Wasatch Title, I made 90. And I was
Were you just blown away by that?
I was crying. I remember coming home just going, I'm out, what is happening?
Yeah.
So, because when I got fired,
you're I'm almost to 6 figures.
That's right. I was like, this is great. Because when I got fired, I was on welfare for a while with my family.
Right.
And I remember just crying, thinking, oh my gosh, this is starting all over for me.
Right.
Anyway, so
I'm living the past that I came from. Yeah.
like I'm stuck in this loop. Like
Right.
what the hell?
Right.
So then I started working with Mike and at Atlas, and then the first year I made with them, I made like 125, and I was like, oh my gosh, I went from 90 to 125, and then it started. Then the next year I made like 175,
Right.
and then 2007 hit, and I thought it was going to get terrible, and I made more. And and every year, 8, 9, 10, 11. And honestly,
and that was your growth cycle from there out.
Yeah.
And the reason I asked that is because I want people who are listening to realize, look, you can start from that 40 grand place and work your way up. You just have to put in the effort to make it happen, right?
And that blew my mind. I literally remember coming to the conclusion, like, this is possible. You can make 40,000.
Right.
And then you can make 200,000.
Right. That was weird for me too.
I get chills saying that.
Yeah,
because my neck. I'm just
Dad
like,
only made
crazy.
35 grand a year, max, and had 8 kids in my family, and so really similar beginnings. And to assume or to perceive that you could come from that and then go have this was a big deal.
Yeah, I remember coming home, working with Atlas, and 1 month. This I think in 2011, I made 60 grand in a month.
In a month, yeah.
And I remember coming home and I was crying because I was pulling up to our house in Saratoga Springs and I was crying. And Viv was like, "What's the matter?" And I'm like, I made more money than some of my siblings make in a year. I made in a month.
Right.
I'm like, this is crazy,
Yeah.
And our house in Saratoga Springs was paid off, and I'm like 6 years ago we were on welfare, and our house is paid off now.
What happened in 6 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's crazy.
So tell me how that happened. What did you get with the right people? Did you put yourself in the right environment? Did you read books? Did you because obviously a lot of you get educated along the way in that type of an industry. But what were kind of the books or the processes that you took or the consistent efforts that you made to get to that point and to continue to grow?
Yeah. So what really pushed it over the top was I remember that we just decided that everything that we did, when we did it, it was going to be exactly right. Like no mistakes, nothing,
Yeah.
And I remember we even did, we started tracking how many funding conditions we would have in a month's time and saying we shouldn't have funding conditions because we know what if we read the lender's instructions, they're asking us for all this stuff. We should give that so that when we get the funding condition, there's no condition, and the condition is just the loan officer's funding condition, not mine.
So you just
does that make sense?
Yep.
So we were like, and I remember 1 month. I mean, I closed 100 transactions in a month, and I remember in 1 month I had like 18 funding conditions in a month, having closed 100 transactions.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So and some of those funding conditions, it was like they would, and even though it was, I thought it was, we would give them like the wiring instructions, and they would say, "Can you send us your wiring instructions again?" I'm like, "Okay, that's stupid, but
Right.
counts against." Or they'd say, "Can you send us the CPL?" And I'm like, "Dude, the CPL was in there.
Right.
I put it in there when I sent the package back." So first thing was like, I remember just deciding that everything we do is going to be exactly right. It's going to be to the very best of what we do.
So be exact.
Yeah, and
be correct. Make sure everything's right.
Yeah, and that was fundamental. And then when that happened, then when I would go market, like I would talk to my clients and I would say, "Hey, do me a favor. Ask." I'm like, "How many funding conditions? How many files? We closed 8 files with you last month. How many files of those 8 files had funding conditions that were my funding conditions?"
Uh-huh.
And they'd say, "Maybe 1." And I'm like, "Do me a favor. Ask the highest producing loan officer in your office how many funding conditions their title company has." And so he would ask them, and they would say, they have funding conditions on every file." And I'm like, now tell them that I don't.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
And he was like, dude, that was awesome. So then I my real, because I didn't like marketing, like cold calling. I'm like shy by nature, honestly. Like I had a hard time doing that. So I would work my magic through my clients and say, just go ask your friends this question.
Right.
And then show them. And then they're not going to believe
you
it.
figured out how to do internal marketing or have your clients, which were the realtors, market for you.
Yeah. That's right. So it's like,
especially if you're kind of shy.
That's right. Like, honestly, I didn't like doing it because I always felt like it was hard for me to say, hey, I'm better than other people.
Right.
But it was okay if someone else said it.
Right.
I don't care.
That's true. Yeah.
Does that make sense? So even Sue Cragen, who you know,
right.
Sue was a loan officer at Chase Bank, and how I got her business was her loan processor was also the loan processor for my client, right? Or for another Chase loan officer. And I told Karen, I'm like, who do you know that I should get business from? And she's like, you got to get business from Sue. And I said, okay, tell her we don't have any funding conditions. Tell her these things. And
Sue is one of my favorite people, by the way.
So I kind of like devised this thing with Karen, and then Karen, when she called Sue, and she's like, hey, Sue, because all the processing was out of Colorado, and Sue was here and locally in Utah. And anyway, one day she called Sue, and she's like, hey, I'm sick of doing funding conditions for your title company. And if you don't use Louie Atlas Title, I don't want to work for you. I don't want to be your processor. And she's like, okay, I'll go to lunch with them. So as Karen set that up, I went to lunch with Sue, and that was over.
Dude, Sue always tells me that I'm the coolest guy she knows. She's like, coolest guy I know. And I'm like, wait, how many other people do you tell that to? So did she tell that to you?
No, I'm not the coolest guy she knows. She knows. Yeah.
So
I'm not cool. I'm a good guy. I'm not the cool.
Okay, gotcha.
You're cool.
I think you're pretty cool.
You're cool. Like I'm like plain. You're hip. You're like.
I was just last night we were doing the breath work, and we'll get into that in just a sec. Kind of your journey from title, your buyout on your company, and journey from that to kind of more of a calling, right?
Yeah.
Of breath work.
Yeah.
But we were at breath work last night, and she's like, Alma, how's it going? Coolest guy I know. And I'm like, oh, come on, Sue. Like, you've got to tell that to everybody, right? And her husband's there. He's like, well, she doesn't say that to me. Matt's there. He's like, I don't know. She doesn't say that to me,
That's right. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, cool. I'm the coolest guy Sue knows.
Yeah.
So tell me about, so then you, what was it that kind of was the driving force? Because not everybody just goes, oh, I'm going to go make money and go get big. You obviously had some exponential growth. What was it that drove you? Was it a mental?
Yeah. So what drove me was, like, honestly, I remember thinking just a couple years ago, I was making $30,000, $40,000 a year.
Right.
And now I'm doing this. And I thought, I'm not like brilliant. I'm not smart. Like, I'm not like this genius.
Right. We discussed that earlier. You're not that bright.
Yeah. I'm not the sharpest tool. But and I didn't set out to do it,
Right.
And I just realized if I was willing to do more than what my competition was doing, and I was willing to give it my all,
right,
that I could win. Right.
Right.
And literally, kind of,
because you found processes, consistent methods you could use that would produce a certain financial outcome. You just had to duplicate it, right?
That's right. And so the thing that really, for me anyway, was my driving force was I want to help other people who were just like me in that situation, thinking, here I am working my butt off, making 40 grand a year. I would never, how will I ever make more and
get to 100,000 or 200 or $1 million? Holy cow, $1 million. Are you kidding me?
How about just 80?
Right.
How about just 80?
Right. How about just double what I'm making now? Yeah.
Yeah. So I found one of my journals, and I wrote my ultimate dream job would be to make $55,000 a year.
Wow.
Have a company paid car. Like,
now, what was important about 55? If you look back at why you wrote that in there, what do you think was important about 55 grand to you at that point?
Because I remember thinking my house payment was $630.
Okay.
And I just kind of did the numbers, and I thought, man, if I made 55 grand, like that would leave me like 1,500.
Right.
That I could save.
The reason I asked that question, and that makes perfect sense. Like you start to justify or identify what the value of money is to you. Like I remember my brother, he was talking about my cousin one time. And he's like, yeah, dude, your cousin's doing great, bro. You know, he's got a great job. He's, making $8 an hour. He's got a boat and a car and all that. And I'm thinking, okay, so $8 an hour, back then will get me a boat and a car. And I'm like, okay, so if I could make a job that's like $12 an hour, then I'd be doing really good. So I started to visualize what my, based on what my cousin did in his life, and created this perception of what money would give me, that amount of money would give me.
Yeah. And I remember thinking, like, my wife could always drive a Honda Accord.
Right.
Nice car.
Yep.
Could always afford that. I could always have an old pickup truck, that I paid maybe 10 grand for or something like.
But it was nice and it ran. Didn't break down all the time.
And I just thought I could always do that. And then I could take tracks if I needed to.
Right.
To save money.
Be frugal.
On gas, and I could do that. And I could have everything. That's all I want. $55,000 a year. And if the company paid for the car.
Right.
Then I could
bonus,
then I could have
a
nicer truck. And if they paid for the car and paid for the gas, then I could get a nicer truck, and that would be it. A nice, $15,000 for a pickup.
That sounds to me not like a job. That sounds like a career.
Yeah, there we go. That's right. That's exactly
a career, just for those listening, if you don't know, you haven't figured this out, a career is just a nice name for a longer job. That's all it is. Hopefully it's long. It's not even guaranteed to be longer, but
that's right.
Yeah,
a prison sentence.
Right. It's a sentence. Yeah. And I always tell people, look, if you're getting a salary or, you're at a career, all you have now is a prescription for your lifestyle. They're prescribing to you how much money you can make and how high your life can go.
That's right.
Financially.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I love how you said it. It's
awesome.
So
what made you bridge the gap between?
So that was when I started doing this and started making more money, I really wanted to help other people that had the drive and said, man, if I could ever make 80, 90, 100 grand, I would do whatever it took.
100 grand was out of the question for where I came from.
Oh yeah.
Out of that, you might as well have been a multimillionaire at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so I remember my brother graduated top of his law school class out of Indiana University.
Wow.
IU. So and then he got his first job at Barnes and Thornburg, which was a big law firm downtown Indianapolis.
Okay.
And they offered him 50 grand a year.
Wow.
So this is in 1988.
That's pretty significant for 88, dude.
Yeah, 88, 89.
That's 120 grand a year.
That's right. So in my mind, so I think when I said 55, I do remember thinking that would be even more. I understand time value of money, and it wasn't the same. But in my head, I'm like, Lance only made 50,000.
I'll make 50.
I'm gonna make 55 plus a car.
And he went to law school, passed the bar, did all the
That's right.
Okay.
So that was it. So that's So then when I started doing well, and I thought I just want to find people who are willing to work hard and do the same thing I did.
Right.
And they can make money. And then if I can make money because I help them to do that, that would be great.
We're all fat, dumb, and happy making money.
That's right. That's right. So that was really the driving force. And then as things progressed, and I got better at sales and better at influencing and, all this stuff. And so then it just started, went from Nudia was the first escrow officer. She was the first escrow officer that worked with me.
Right.
Or I think it was actually Jake Sorensen.
And
Jake Sorensen
and Nudia now has her own title company, and she's doing dynamically well.
That's right. That's right.
So you saw these people and you wanted to help them, wanted to show them the vision, the light, the way.
Correct.
And that was kind of a driving force for you.
That was it. Because I always thought when I would see my dad as a kid and he would talk to these guys that looked rich and had nice clothes.
Right.
And I always think, oh man, I hope they're telling my dad how to get rich. Please, however you did it, just tell him what you did.
Wow.
And then he should do whatever you did.
Then then we can have what they have.
Then we can have what they had. That's what I always thought. Why don't you just do what this guy does? Just do that.
Right.
I don't care if you want to, you don't want to, do it.
Now, is that naive? Because I looked at it and when I was a kid, I looked at the same thing. I'm like, okay, I don't want to do that job because that job only gets me that. And I don't want to do that one because, I wanted to be a cop. I wanted to be a spy,
Yeah.
there's so, but then I was like, how much do they make? I learned how much they make. And I'm like, that would make more than anybody's ever made. But then I started one thing my dad always gave me was the vision of dreaming. He always said, you can accomplish anything you want to. And even though later in life, he told me, my biggest year while you guys were kids and growing up in the house was like 35 grand. And I was like, with the moment he told me that, I was like, holy cow, Dad. He goes, what? I made that last week. And he was like, are you kidding me? And I said, yeah. I said, and he goes, but then what he did was he was like, you're living my dream. And I'm like, that's true. Like I learned how to dream from him, and then I learned how to work and how to identify I had work ethic from him, but then I learned how to do specific tasks that paid certain amounts of money and then be smarter with it. And then it eventually gave me, exuberant amounts of income.
Yeah.
So that's all you did with the title company.
That was it.
And just recreate just over and over again.
Yeah.
And since then you've built this company up. It got huge in the state of Utah. Like it was pretty rare to have anybody who wasn't working with Vanguard. I mean, you really did dominate on some level.
Yeah. We were doing a lot of business. I mean, everybody was, but still proportionally.
Proportionally, you were.
Yeah, it was a lot. Like it was a lot. And yeah, so then it kind of came to a point where Fidelity National Title approached us. I'd never, if you had asked me a year ago before selling, do you plan on selling? I'm like, no way.
Right.
Like, no, I ain't done yet.
Right. Yeah.
This isn't over.
I'm not retirement age. What are you talking about?
That's right. So anyway, and then we kind of thought, well, anyway, so they approached us and it was just perfect timing. Like, and I thought, man, when are we ever going to get a deal like this? An offer like this again?
Right.
When's the next business cycle? Right. Which is like, anyway, ends up, we sell and I mean,
did pretty good.
Did pretty good. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. More than what I ever in my life dreamed I would ever make.
Right.
Ever. And that was it, like that's what,
so. And the reason I want to point that out is a lot of people look at that and go, it's an overnight 20-year success,
Oh, and that was the other thing too, is like the money that I used to start my own office, like it was my own money, right? Like,
right.
I had 20 grand to start my own office with Mike Brown.
Okay.
And he goes, let me put down the 20. I'm like, no, I got it. He goes, nope, I want to do it for you. And so I was like, okay, but I have the money to do it.
Right.
He's like, no, I'll let me do that. Cause I know I'm going to make money off, this is going to be profitable for me. So let me do this. But I mean, effectively I had my own money to put in there. You know what I mean? Like I did, it was everything. Like I bought the copier, all of this stuff. And it was like nothing, right? It was like all, no seed money, I guess I'm saying. Like nobody gave me money to do that.
Right.
It was just scratching and saving and making it happen and all of that. It was crazy.
And, one thing that I love about you, man, is you've always been so authentically who you are. Like you're so authentic. You're so yourself. You're so non-apologetic. And that's not really the environment that we grew up in, you and I. I mean, we grew up in an environment that was strict and specific and religious and, and
you follow the rule.
Yeah, you follow the rule.
The rule's better than you.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And that's one of the things I love about you is that you're willing to step out and create kind of your own mow your own path basically in life. You have principles, right? You have values. You have minimum standards for yourself, right? Is that all fair statement?
Yeah.
And yet you're still willing to step outside of what you were learned or indoctrinated by throughout time and say, oh, this works and it's good and it's moral and it's legal. And so I'm going to go do it. And so you built this company literally ground up, bare bones. It grew massively. You served people the highest level that you possibly could serve them. And then you weren't expecting it. And Fidelity came and bought the whole company.
Yeah, true.
So then comes to something that's really special to my heart, which is what you're doing now, which is the next level and what I think is a calling of yours. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, 100%. Like I would say that's a fair statement.
And how do you view it? Because I know I'd be the first to admit that you're not a perfect guy.
Yeah. Hey, bring Viv on here. That's all I need.
Yeah, Viv will tell us. Yeah, Vivian.
She'll tell you the real story.
Louie's wife will tell the story. But you've been, I feel like you have kind of a calling for what you're doing now, which is a really intense breath work kind of environment that you've created. And doing breath work now, I've gone to like Tony Robbins and stuff, and he does like some mild breath work and some meditation and things like that. That was my first entry to anything like that.
Same.
And where we grew up, they talked about prayer and meditation, but they just kind of left out the meditation. They didn't really teach meditation in our religious belief. And so, I'm sorry, the phone rang. And so for me, meditation was a whole new level of spirituality and really helped me immediately. I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible.
Yeah.
And then 1 year ago, almost, our mutual friend, George, came to me and he goes, hey, we're doing a breathwork session at Louie's house. And I'm like, okay, you had been doing it for a couple of years, at least at that point, right? Several years.
Yeah, I think 2 years, 2
years.
Yeah,
okay. And so, I'm like, yeah, I've always wanted to go, Lindsay told me about it and I want to go to this. And so I'm like, oh yeah, let's go. So we went up to your cabin and we laid on our back, and I didn't really actually know what breathwork was. I had like no freaking clue. Yeah. And we lay down, put an eye mask on, and you brought us through this breathing cycle. Dude, I was so high and so clear off of my own breath and doing nothing else but breathing. It took me to this clarity that I have never experienced before in my life. And I opened up all my emotions and released so much stuff that first time. It blew my freaking mind, dude. Yeah. I've never experienced anything like that. I have since then, because I've done it probably like 40 more times with you or whatever since then. And I'm almost, I have somewhat of an addiction to the process, because I feel like I'm like my truest or deepest self. But what it does is it really brings you away from your, I don't know, what would you call it? Away from your own fears, or kind of brings you to your truest self.
Yeah, I would say like it takes you out of, takes you out of your ego, right? Takes you out of any perception of yourself that you need to look better than you really are.
Okay, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like it takes you out of, and what another way to say that is like, it really takes you out of your own personal self-judgment. Like you just love yourself for as you are. As fat
that
as you
makes
are,
sense.
like as ugly as you are, as fat as you are, as a dumb, whatever it is that you think that where you're real.
Well, it's crazy when I'm in that state of mind and doing the breath work. That's funny because I never even think about any of that stuff.
That's right.
I'm not thinking about my physical appearance. I'm not thinking about money. I'm not thinking about the stress of bills or what's going on. I'm not thinking about actually any of that stuff. I just go to my most pure and open self.
Yeah, it's like you go back to the mindset you had when you were a kid, and you were just like, dude, I don't care if I'm fat, leave my shirts off, or if I got, chocolate dripping down my face or whatever. Like, you don't care.
Right.
But because I loved eating that chocolate, I don't care if it's all over my face. Like, that's a badge of honor. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care. So it takes you back to that, to being childlike, really, like without judgment, right?
Right.
Just without any worry of how people see you or how you see yourself or where you are in your life. It takes you out of all of that. And it just suspends everything that isn't you.
I love that. It's
Everything
so
that
true,
isn't you,
man.
it just suspends all of it. It pushes it all out. That's not you.
All the external BS.
Yeah, even kind of like you said, it's true. It's like it's almost even your body. Like it pushes even your body, like the aches and pain of your body, or the, you know, the uncomfortableness. Like
Right.
you're getting a little bit fat. You can feel your gut hanging over your belt, and you're like,
Right.
like it takes away all of that, and you're just like, oh, I'm just me.
Right.
Oh shoot.
And you know what was interesting last night when we were doing breath work? I remember feeling, I was like, oh man, I should have taken off my belt, because I could feel, but it was soothing to me. The pain that the belt caused, or the discomfort the belt caused to me, because I was so deep in this breath work, it was almost soothing to feel a discomfort. It was really interesting. I don't know if that makes sense, but what I find is that it takes me outside of my body, and it enables me to be like just operating off of my spirit.
Yeah.
And my soul rather than my body,
Yeah, that I love that you said that, because that is what it does. It really does. It suspends even like what you feel physically. It suspends even that to a large part.
Right. And we're not taking any shrooms,
No,
right?
no,
we're not
no.
smoking any pot, right?
Just a breath of life.
We're literally just breathing,
breathing.
in a certain pattern
Yeah.
that causes you to exit your current state and puts you in another state of mind, and enables you to have, in my perspective, absolute clarity.
Yeah.
Absolute clarity.
Yeah.
I mean, I even came up with the name Clozer Cult up in your above the garage when we were doing breath work at your cabin.
Oh yeah.
I came up with the name Clozer Cult while I was laying on your floor doing breath work.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the stuff, right?
Right.
Like, it gets you back to being authentically you.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, this is me. And yeah, so that was, how I got started in it is that Spring Benson,
Uh-huh.
a friend of mine, said, hey, there's a guy comes from Sedona, you need to do this breath work, and he's coming to Salt Lake, and it's 2 hours long. And I'm like, breath work? She's like, yeah, when Tony Robbins does that, it's kind of like that, but longer. I'm like, how could you do that for 2 hours? Like,
Right.
I'm like, he does that thing for 10 minutes. And I'm like,
Right.
she's like, just do it. Just do it.
You'll get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I always tell Spring, I'm like, if it wasn't for you, that was it. And so I did it, and kind of had the same experience that you had. I was with my wife, and she didn't really like it the first time, because sometimes it takes a minute. Like, it's so unusual.
Right. It's so different than what you're
you've ever
typically
done.
used to
So
doing.
sometimes you come the first time and you're like, not for me.
Right.
But it takes your body, it's like sometimes there's some people that it takes the second and third time to go, oh my gosh, I get it now. It's just a conditioning. Anyway, I got in a car with her, and she was like, how'd it go for you? She's like, I just thought it was okay. She's like, I felt really relaxed. That was
Right.
it. And I just started crying. I'm just like, I talked to God. I don't know what to say, like I did. And I just cried. It was super emotional for me. It was so powerful. And I'll tell you, just in my, the reason, I guess the reason why I say that is because, I had this specific message in my first practice, right? And when I asked Zach a question, I said, hey, Zach, why did I have tetany so bad?
Yeah, where your muscles
Cramp,
tighten up,
tighten up and
cramp
hard
up,
and all
yeah.
this stuff. I said, why did that happen? So, I was crying. It hurt because I was resisting it.
Right.
And Zach looked at me, and I don't know Zach, never met him before in my life. And he said the exact same thing that I heard in my breath work, And he looked at me and said, because God puts messages in your heart, and because you're willing to share it with the world, he'll continue to do it. And I looked at Zach like, what in the hell?
What?
How would you possibly know that, So I called him up a couple days later because I said, hey, can we talk for a minute? He goes, yeah. I said, why did you say that to me?
Yeah.
How could you possibly have, why did you, because I didn't tell him that. I said, why did you say that to me? And he goes, man, it was the strangest thing. I looked at you and I said it. And he goes, and then I thought, what? He goes, and then I thought, what the hell does that have to do with tetany? I have no idea.
Right.
He goes, but I knew I needed to say that to you. He goes, so why did I say that to you? I said, because that was the theme of my breath work.
And
like mind blowing.
Yeah. Those experiences happen, I think, every week. Like every week that we do this, those experiences happen. And, yesterday it was interesting. I felt highly connected. There's been some changes. I've left the real estate company I'm at, went to this new company. And when I was in the middle of that whole process, I felt so calm and so comfortable and so confident through the whole process.
Mm.
And so it's like, and I feel like that happens every time I do the breath work. The breath work is something that I literally cannot do without now,
Yeah.
It's something that it's part of my ritual, monthly, where I do it every couple, times a month or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was just say this is that, there's a author, his name is Orson Swett Martin. And he said this, and this is, I think why I love the breath work so much is that he said, that God, and this guy wrote books back in the 1800s.
Right.
So this is how old he is. But he said, God would never allow his children to have dreams and desires, righteous desires, that were not possible for them to achieve.
Interesting.
That would be a very unkind God. To allow you to dream of things, right? And so he says, so he goes on to kind of say, so your dreams and your aspirations are prophecies, revelations, and indications of the possible reality that you can create should you persist in becoming the best person you can become. Those dreams and aspirations are prophecies, indications of what could be real for you. Because God put them in you and he wants to help you to achieve it. And the only way he's going to help you is by you doing your best.
So,
dude, that to me,
yeah.
So the breath work so aligns with that because it gives you clarity to what you really dream. Like, I don't dream of having a $55,000.
Right. So why don't,
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So why don't people do it? Like, why don't more people go out and go, look, I don't want to work a job anymore. I know I've been here for 25 years or I've been 30 years working the same job, making this money. I've been prescribed this certain amount of money. Why don't people just break away and go do what you've done, built a company and sell it to somebody in the future?
Because they don't have a dream. They don't believe that dream is possible. And I told my wife this, I tell this to everybody, I would never have accomplished what I've accomplished, except for the fact I got fired 2 times.
Right.
I never would have quit my first job.
What a gift.
What
a gift it was to get fired, right?
Yeah, it was 2 times within 7 months. I got fired twice in 2003 and 2004. And I'm in May of 2003 and of January of 2004, I got fired, and so I never would have done it. And it makes me emotional because I'm I never would have chosen to do it because I was too afraid. I didn't think it was possible for me. And I would hear people say, it's, you read stories of Henry Ford or whoever, these people that start Microsoft or Steve Jobs.
But don't I just want to stay in a job and be safe, Louie? Yeah. Why not? Why?
Or I'm not a Steve Jobs or
right.
That's for other people. But all of that cool stuff and all of that possibility is for other people, but not for me.
Right.
But it's for all of us. Should we persist in achieving that dream? It's all possible.
I remember when I first started in real estate, and the most I had made in 1 year was $35,000. And I thought, it's what I'm supposed to do, right? Yeah. It's and I remember I was driving trucks. I was a truck driver, and I delivered lumber for Burton Lumber at that time.
Awesome. That's awesome. That's a cool job.
It was cool, man. I made $12.50 an hour, ran a forklift, loaded my own truck, dumped 30,000 pounds of lumber on the ground for people. It was actually pretty cool, but it was that was my prescription. I had a prescription for income, right? And I knew that the highest that they paid was, $13 an hour, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they pay more than that now with inflation, right? But but I always thought like that this is what I do. This is where I'm going to end up at. And I'll just keep doing this, right? And but then I could remember my dad's words that you can accomplish anything you want. And I'm like, okay, but so I have these dreams. So I guess I could just stay there and keep doing what I'm doing, but I have these huge dreams.
Mm-hmm.
My problem was I'm not educated. I didn't go to college. I don't have a degree. I didn't go to high school. I didn't go to junior high or even elementary. You know, I didn't go to any of that. So I was like, dude, this is where I'm going to have to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And if it wasn't for some people like George Morris and John Syatt and some other people who brought me under their wing and said, no, you don't need any of that. You can go do this stuff over here. We'll teach you on the job and you'll go make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. And I was foolish enough to believe them. Foolish enough to believe them. Mm-hmm. And it happened to pay off.
Yeah.
And year 1 in real estate, I made $100,000. Year 2, I made $100,000. Year 3, I made 120. And then I realized, okay, I'm slightly growing, right? 120. That's pretty good, you know?
Yeah. Awesome.
And then I was like, how do I grow to the next level? So I'm like, okay, now I've learned the 6-figure game. Blew my mind. I think maybe I was like the only kid or first kid in my family, I'm not sure, to make that kind of money. I know my other brother made that kind of money later, but if you're willing to take a risk on yourself mm-hmm. and believe in yourself and make a choice, I don't want to work this job anymore. So I went and quit Burton Lumber. I went straight to real estate. I burnt the boats. I didn't have a backup plan. I just went full into real estate and I made it happen. And you did the same thing. So how come anyone else who's listening on here or anyone else who's in a job who they've been at for 25 years or whatever can't just end what they're doing and go do that? What can they?
I think if it's in their DNA, like
right.
I think if it's part of their plan, right? It's like
they got to have a dream, right?
They got to have a dream, yeah. Because I will tell you, like,
not everybody can do it, but will they do it, right?
Yeah, and it's not always right. It's not always about the amount of money you make, right? It's about whatever it is you set out to accomplish. That's your dream, right?
And so success is different for everybody.
That's right. That's right. But we're just using that as an ideal, right?
Yeah.
Like whether it is you're going to go and, finally be a school teacher that you always want to do instead of, taking calls at Amazon or something, or whatever. But like, I think we know it. I think sometimes we're so disconnected from who we are authentically. Mm-hmm. We don't know what we want.
So what does the dream have to consist of? What are the elements of a dream? That's what I always ask people, ask myself, what are the elements of my dream? Okay, I want to serve people. You had that, right?
That's right. Yep, that's right.
Because I want to see them get to the next level and believe that I just want to see them believe that they can quit their job they're in. That's step 1. Like, you can quit,
That's right. That's right.
Then you go believe in yourself. That's another step. Mm-hmm. Then you go do what somebody tells you to do that's gotten there before you. That's another step.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh my gosh, this is working. And you make money and then you duplicate it. That's the next step, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So there's all these steps. And then you start to develop other dreams like Rob Adams. I had him on my podcast a few weeks ago.
Yeah, the Thanksgiving Heroes. Yeah.
Thanksgiving Heroes. And he's created this thing where now he feeds 8,000 families a year with his organization.
Yeah.
Whereas when he first started, he could barely feed himself.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
So it takes a big enough dream.
Yeah, I think it takes. I read a book once, and I loved how it said it. It said something to this effect. It said, "What you need to be most concerned about is how you want to help in the world."
Interesting.
How is it? What is it? Because I will tell. So this is my own, and I love this book. I can't remember the exact title of it right now, but the reason why I loved it is because it's what I found, right? Because I was like you when I got fired from Fidelity Investments, which is not Fidelity Investments, right?
Right.
And I got this job on title. and I had a neighbor of mine saying, "Oh, you're a title guy." I'm like, "Dude, I do not want to be a title guy." And I applied for the FBI because I thought, dude, that's
Did
what
you
I want.
really?
Yeah.
Dude, I didn't know you applied.
But
Dude,
I'm
you
not
wanted to
smart
be a
enough
spy,
dude,
bro.
that's exactly
what I wanted to be, dude.
So,
Yeah.
so I applied for the FBI, nothing, right? I actually got a call back from the DEA because I thought if I could be a federal agent, then maybe I could transfer to, and the DEA said we would take, they would take me, right?
Wow.
And but by the time I got in shape, because you have to do certain, have to run a mile or a mile and a half in like 10 minutes or something, and do so many push-ups and so many pull-ups. So I was working out. I was going to Jordan. I'd go to Jordan Beat Digger High School here and work out and run the laps and the track and all that stuff. By the time I got in shape and stuff, and I was ready to go take the PT test, and then I asked the recruiter again. I said, "How much money do they make?" And he's like, "Well, we're going to start you out at $50,000 a year." And I'm like, "Dude, I just made 95. I'm not going back."
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I hated it because I felt conflicted because I hated being a title person because
Right.
there was no prestige to it.
Right.
I want to be able to say, "You're a CIA agent."
Right, you're the
Yes.
grunt worker, dude.
That's right. That's right. And so, but I remember hating it. And I kind of got to a point where I kind of had I had this epiphany is that I don't have to do title. I might be a title guy on the outside, but I can help people and change their lives even as a escrow officer. I could do that.
Right.
And so then I started looking for ways to help people, to talk about things during a closing and to say, like just stuff. And so I would, because I love self-help and I read all these self-help books, and just the quintessential example is I was sitting there at the table one time and this younger couple, I don't know, maybe 10 years younger than me, and their kids were little. They had like 2 little kids at the closing and they're running around. And I said, "Hey, are these all your kids?" And they're like, "No." I said, "Oh, what else do you have?" And they said, "We have a 1-year-old that's home." So they had like a 3.5-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 1-year-old. I'm like, dude.
Yeah.
And so I was sitting there in the
They're in the
closet.
thick of it.
Yeah, it's awful. It's terrible. Terrible. And so I was sitting there at the closing, and this is years into being this, but this is just a perfect example of what I realized back in 04, 05, 06.
Right.
And been practicing it. Anyway, so I sat there at the closing and I said, "You know what? Man, when my kids were that little, my marriage was hard. We fought a lot." And I said, and everything just seemed stressful, and our marriage was hard. And I said, "Wow, man,
they're
little
going.
kids." Well, I said, little kids. I said, "Man, I miss my little kids, but I don't miss the challenge that it put with my wife, with Viv and I."
Right.
And man, I'm glad our kids are older right now. And the wife, she stopped signing and she goes, "What'd you do? How did it get better? Are you still married?" I said, "Yeah." She's like, "What'd you do? How did it get better?" I said, "Oh, really?" She goes, "Yeah." And so then we started. She's like, I said, "Well, I read a couple of these books and we did this," and she's writing it all down, and she's not even thinking about closing right now. You know what I mean?
Right.
And she was like, "Okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna read these books, and our marriage is gonna be great." And anyway, she was really, and then she turned to the real estate agent and said, "I'm so glad you had us come here. This was an incredible conversation." And like my heart was just pounding. I just felt so happy. Like,
Purpose.
Yeah, purpose.
Yeah.
That was it.
Right.
And so to me, if someone says like, "Why were you successful?" is because I didn't think I was an escrow officer.
Right.
Like
You were just serving humanity.
That's it. I was contributing to the world, and however, at my highest and best, whatever that was, and I wasn't afraid to say it.
So really,
those things. And
so really, that's where the true joy comes in.
That's right.
Is in serving others. It's not. I mean, you can make all this money, you can have all the success, you can sell companies, you can do it. But if this isn't correct and you're not projecting it and helping others,
that's right. Okay. That's right. And that's, to me, then that's how it transitioned into the breathwork, because it's such a way. I found it like it's a path that other people can start identifying with who they are authentically and start creating an awareness of, hey, I need to make some changes in my life.
Now,
Like,
you
does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like you're shedding all of this expectation, these outward influences, and you're suspending everything to go, who am I? What do I really want? Is it money? Is it like, do I want to quit all this and stop being an attorney to be a school teacher?
Right.
Like, you know, or whatever, right? Like, what am I to become?
Right.
And that's what I love about this practice of breath work, this specific style of rebirthing and stuff, because it allows the person to start to see who they really are and the path that they want to authentically walk.
I love it, man. It's done amazing wonders for me. Like it's something I have to have in my life now. You know, it's a consistent thing. And I know when I'm off, dude, I just need to go. You know?
It's not me you want. It's breath work.
No, I do want you too.
I'm not the coolest guy, you know.
Hey, that was Sue, not me.
That's right.
Dude, Louie, thanks. How can people find you? How can they find your breath work?
Yeah, so I have it's very rudimentary, but I have a group on Meetup, which is a
social media app.
A social media app for groups so if they go on Meetup and type in The Breath of Life, or if you Google The Breath of Life Utah,
right,
you would find that through Meetup, and then I schedule all my sessions off of that app.
And I'm telling you, like, it has been one of the most life-changing things for me. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Also, thank you for being who you are.
Yeah.
And being so authentic, open. I mean,
you.
you're one of my greatest confidants. I know I could tell you anything in the world and you wouldn't judge me. You'd love me.
Yeah.
You'd serve me. You'd help me get to the next. It's funny because every time I'm thinking about you, you'll like call me or you'll text me or something. You're very in tune, which is hilarious. Like today, when you tried to call me and I said, hey, I'll call you right back.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of a meditation, writing in my journal. I'm thankful for Louie in my life. I'm not kidding,
That's
dude.
crazy.
I am not kidding you.
Why is that? This seems like every time I do call you, you're like, what is happening?
It's so true, dude. Like, that's why I'm always like, dude, are you in tuned right now? Like when we saw each other at Tony Robbins, and we weren't expecting it, and I got done with the bathroom, and usually I would just go walk back and sit down, right? I walked back and I stopped, and I'm like, I don't know why I need to stop right here. I don't know why. And then here comes Louie in a room full of 10,000 people, and you're walking right up to me, and we didn't know we were there. Yeah,
that was crazy.
It's crazy.
Awesome.
So, anyways.
Thanks,
guys,
Alma.
hit this up. Thank you, Louie, for being here, man. And you guys, thank you for listening to another amazing episode of Clozer Cult Podcast. I'd like to thank our guest, Louie Hamner. Again, The Breath of Life on Meetup. And, guys, hit us up on Facebook. Hit us up on YouTube, Instagram. Thank you for listening.